footage.
You've seen footage of
shredded children's bodies. And that's my taxpayer dollars. I'm going to bomb those kids.
So I think we should kill them all. If that makes you feel better. Everybody.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I pay more taxes than her. I don't want a ceasefire. I want more fire. I want all the fire. I love these activists that go in, and it's like, you had a ceasefire on October 6th. You had all of this on October 6th. What changed? Maybe you're asking the wrong elected government. You should be asking the elected government of Hamas. Welcome back to the program. Dana Loesch here with you. Bottom of this third hour, you can listen coast to coast. You can stream the radio program. You can catch the video component over at Channel 347 DirecTV, YouTube, and Facebook as well. So that video that we played for you, and I'm pulling up the article because I love the media. They go and they saw this and they're like, wow, this congressman wants to kill all the people. Congressman Andy Ogles, member of the House Freedom Caucus and the House Financial Services Committee. He's out of Tennessee, beautiful Tennessee. He's in the Nashville area. He joins us via Skype. They're trying to say, Congressman, that they're pretending that nuance doesn't exist because that's a hot new trend today in society. But I mean, Hamas chose to engage this way. People just need to stand back and let Israel do what Israel does. I thought that activist that was questioning you, I noticed she didn't have anything to say about what happened before October 7th. She didn't have anything to say about any agreements that were in place before then, did she?
Well, I mean, that's right. I mean, in these snowflakes, I mean, their idea of peace is one-sided. Their idea of tolerance is one-sided. And let's keep in mind, prior to October 7th, there was a land for peace deal about 20 years ago. Israel has been under attack for the last 20 years. So this idea of peace in the Middle East or peace in Israel is non-existent. And on October 7th, Hamas crossed a line that they can never come back from. And every member of Hamas and all of their accomplices and all of their funders deserve whatever it is biblical that Israel rains down on their head. And look, when you understand that Hamas was raping and torturing babies, toddlers, young girls, young boys, they were cutting off the breasts of women while they were being gang raped. They were raping men and cutting off their testicles. These people are animals. They are evil incarnate on this earth. And anyone who has sympathy for Hamas is an idiot.
And also, Congressman, I wondered every time I hear the debates on the floor, do a lot of your Democratic brethren there in the chamber, do they understand that that Hamas was elected? They had overwhelming, this was back in 2006, they enjoyed, a landslide victory, and their support, their popularity has grown. It grew to the point where they suspended elections because Fatah was concerned they were going to overtake them in West Bank because, for all intents and purposes, I mean, Hamas was also, kind of the big player in West Bank as well. And I feel like a lot of your Democrat brethren on the other side of the aisle there, they don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, people try to make this clear distinction between the Palestinians and Hamas, and it's a blurred line. You got to understand that the Palestinians, their government is funding Hamas. That the tunnels are coming up in through people's homes, yes, up through people's businesses. I mean, they're literally helping Hamas engage in terror. So look, if you kill someone and I provide you the weapon and I load the weapon, I'm an accomplice to that murder, right? And so this is what you have to view this lens through: is that you have people in the Gaza that are accomplices to Hamas. And look, justice has to be delivered. And look, it's time for the foreign governments, United States or France or Germany, to get out of the way of Israel. It's time to let Israel take the muzzle off of Israel and let Israel do whatever it has to do. Let them dictate their policies on this issue. And look, because if there was a group in Mexico that were lobbing IEDs into Houston or Dallas or somewhere, we would occupy Mexico City within 48 hours. You know what? We probably wouldn't give it back. And so to hold Israel to some other standard is ridiculous. And so I'm fed up with the snowflakes. I'm fed up with the left. And the left has been trying to blame Israel for the attack on October 7th. The left media, the woke media, is responsible for the anti-Semitism in this country. So the increase in tax on the Jewish country here on the homeland is because of the leftist media, because they refuse to condemn Hamas. They refuse to condemn the Palestinians for their complicitness in this, and they refuse to acknowledge the atrocities that happened October 7th. And I'm not going to back down from this, and there's no point in me doing so.
Well, good. We're talking with Congressman Andy Ogles from beautiful state of Tennessee, 5th Congressional District. I have to note for everybody, the woman who's asking him those questions that you were talking to, sir, in that video, she's with Code Pink. That a very far left Marxist organization. Everybody knows Code Pink. You say Code Pink and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that group, they're still around. That's what they do. They just yell non sequiturs at lawmakers, and then they try to do these gotcha things. I wanted to ask you as well, because I'm going to switch gears here, because this was something that you released the beginning of this month, the Send Them Back Act. Now, we broadcast out of Texas, so we're in a super fun border state. We've got affiliates all over the country, but we got a lot of border area affiliates as well, including our great friends down in KURV, the McAllen area, which was a hot spot of crossing until all these force multipliers from the government. Now everyone's going over to California. This gets me that everybody's hands are tied, and this administration doesn't allow these governors and local law enforcement to properly detain and stop this deluge coming in. You've introduced the Send Them Back Act, and it's short for, and I like the name of it, Sending Evading Non-Documented Threats Home, Especially Migrants Biden Accepted Carelessly and Knowingly Act. I felt like there was a very careful purpose in the naming of this. Tell me about this act.
Well, it's quite simple. Look, we know that our country has been overrun by illegals even before Biden, but you've got to start somewhere. And so this is our country. We get to decide who comes here. And quite frankly, we get to decide who stays. And so we picked a date, which was the beginning of Joe Biden's term in office. So roughly 8 to 10 million people have come here illegally. And what this does, it labels anyone who came during that time period into this country illegally. They would then be labeled for immediate deportation. And look, I know that's going to be harsh. I know it's going to be messy, but we have 8 million people here illegally. And just in the state of Tennessee.
And that doesn't even include the gotaways.
That's right. Well, but here's the thing. In the state of Tennessee, on an annual basis, it costs our state almost $1 billion a year. Illegal immigration does. Healthcare, food stamps, education, et cetera, et cetera. So those are dollars that should be going to taxpayers of Tennessee, going to our textbooks, going to our veterans. The suicide rate among veterans is still 22 a day. Like, we have things that we should be taking care of at home versus the illegals that Joe Biden is letting in. And I'm going to say this. There's a nefarious purpose for him doing this that's twofold. One, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, he's trying to flood those areas with a constituency that will vote blue, get them hooked on welfare and food stamps and hope that they vote Democrat. So in the short term, they're trying to hold New Mexico and Arizona in perpetuity. But when you get to the census in 10 years, illegals are counted in the census. And so when you look at states like California that has population flight, they're backfilling that state with illegals. When you look at New York that has population flight, they're backfilling that population with illegals. Why? Because if the population drops, they lose congressional seats. So this is all about power and control. They don't care about you, Dana. They don't care about me. They don't care about the state of Tennessee. This is about the Democrats controlling the country and, quite frankly, screwing this country up even more.
Yeah, we're talking to Congressman Andy Ogles, and this is he's in Tennessee. I love Tennessee, very beautiful state. Got a lot of friends who live there. I was thinking back. The president spoke this morning to governors. He's meeting with the Governors Association, and he mentioned y'all in the House again, saying that it's your fault that their supplemental to Ukraine's not getting passed. It's your fault. Nothing's happening with the border. I think it's perfectly reasonable, as I'm sure the millions of people who are listening to the program or streaming it think. We're all on the same page here. I mean, you got to kind of protect what's, your land at home. You got to protect your porch here at home before you go out and help your neighbors with their houses. And I'm just looking at Israel. I'm not even talking about like Ukraine and all that yet. I mean, there still has not been a clear, clarifying breakdown of what we're actually paying for in Ukraine, what's happened to what's happening to the money previously, and what the objectives are. So it seems perfectly reasonable, Congressman, to not want to pass all of this money during a time of inflation when we don't even know where it's going to go, and we're looking at our border going, but what about this?
Yeah. Well, the Biden administration wants to send over another $60 billion to Ukraine. Keep in mind, the budget for the United States Marines last year was about $58.3 billion. So we're going to spend more money in this tranche, which is in addition to all the other monies we've sent them, more than we spent on our U.S. Marines last year. That's a travesty. But that being said, we live out in the country. We've got a farm. We live on top of a hill. I've got an old tractor, right? The brakes work most of the time. I would really like a new tractor.
You live on a hill and you got a tractor where the brakes work most of the time.
I'm really good driving the tractor with the bush off. But all that to say is, if I want a new tractor, I've got to find money in the budget.
Right.
And what this administration is doing is using America's credit credit card, our great-grandchildren's credit card, and we've got to start paying for these things we're spending money on. So guess what? My wife's told me I'm not getting a tractor because, you know what? It's not in the budget right now. And I'm telling Joe Biden, no Ukraine funding. Secure the dang border. Start sending people home. If we're going to take care of our foreign allies, it should be Israel and Taiwan, not Ukraine. By the way, rated one of the most corrupt countries in the world. There's that, of course.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point as well. A very good point. Yeah, I just saw that. I was like, oh, boy, he's going to kick off another war. The president going after members of the House again. Before I let you go, I wanted to also bring up, you and Congressman Massey, who's a good friend of the show, you guys are leading opposition to this permanent reauthorization of the undetectable. This is that ghost gun thing. I cannot stand the term ghost gun because it's just this name that they give to firearm for hobbyists to make unserialized firearms. And they can do that. I mean, there's a federal statute already if they're going to sell them, but they act like gangbangers are going out there, Congressman, with 3D printers, and they're just distributing them to all the gangs in LA and Chicago and Philly and elsewhere. Tell me about this, because I feel like they're going to go after 3D printers and everything else next.
Well, so there's a bit of, so sometimes you got to figure out, like, why are they doing this? So when you look at the application of the ghost gun, the undetectable, so there's undetectable firearms and there's ghost guns. So the undetectable firearms is basically a gun that's all plastic. Yeah. That's not a real application. People aren't making those in their garage, right?
No, and they can only be fired like once or twice and then it melts.
Exactly. So one person, someone might just shrug their shoulders and say, well, that's no big deal. But when you combine that with the ATF's new rule on the receiver rule, which has to deal with plastics, now what this allows, when you combine that with the other rule, then the ATF could then single out, say, Glock, for example, who has a gun that is majority plastic, or a large portion of it is plastic. I've got one. And they could say, you know what, this falls under these two components of law and or rule, and now you no longer can sell those weapons. So there's a pathway here for that to be applied to basically ban guns by manufacturer. And so this is, again, the Biden administration. They can't pass outright gun control. They can't usurp the Second Amendment. So what they're going to do is they're going to rule you to death. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. So thank you to my good buddy, Thomas Massey, for standing with me on this. We brought it to the attention of leadership, and they were like, holy crap, we didn't realize that this was going on, and this is how it could be applied. And so our plan is to stop it and block it and prevent the Biden administration. Look, I'm a big gun guy. I'm one of those guys that had the Christmas card. We're all holding guns. It went international. I think it was MSNBC did a little series on us talking about our children weren't safe. Baloney. They all know how to use a gun, right?
My son got a shotgun
the left
for Christmas.
has an agenda, right? They don't want you to have a gun. Yeah. They don't want me to have a gun. And you know what? I love guns. I shoot guns. I'm going to continue to do so.
And this is probably for a future discussion as this progresses, but I'd love, because now we're getting into the materials of firearms, and I love how they're just trying, I mean, not love, I am amused, how they're trying every which way to go after firearms, ban everything, confiscate everything. It might be a question for Stephen Halbrook, Kane, but I'd love to talk again as this progresses, because I would just think if the common use, that was that's come up over and over again in numerous Second Amendment cases, you know, whether it's Heller, whether it's the Bruin case, commonly owned firearms. Scalia noted this in Heller. I mean, I would just think if it's made of, you know, if you got plastic involved in it, you got polymer, you got metal, whatever. If it's commonly owned, that seems like it's a strong defense against it. And I would love to know how they're going to get around that, because I don't think they can.
Well, what you do is they litigate to death. You look at President Donald Trump. You know, they can't beat him in the courts per se, so they sue, they tie him up, cost him millions of dollars in legal fees. You look at Polymer 80, who's been targeted by the government, who they sell the incomplete lowers, right? You know, so they're targeting them, they're going after them, they're tying them up in court, and so they're racking up millions of dollars in legal fees. Well, if you're a small operator, that puts you out of business. And so this, again, is an intentional act by this government to weaponize the government against these companies and ultimately against you and I.
That's a very good point. Congressman Andy Ogles, love to have you back, especially as this progresses, because I'm very interested in watching the fight against that. Thank you so much for what you do. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. God bless.